Well. You're listening to Gloves Off with Professor Buitrón. Alright then, I may say words on point, straightforward. No jibber jabber, everybody forward. Issues, facts and solution. Get it at Gloves Off with Professor Buitrón. Alright, what other thing is a revolution? Get it on point with Professor Buitrón. Gloves Off, no nonsense issues, politics, community. A better men follow reader. Gloves Off, a revolutionary show with everything that you need to know. With Professor Buitrón. Watch ya!
Gloves Off is always on point. Bringing you the best on current issues, community affairs, and the happenings around us. This segment of Gloves Off is brought to you by the best, so pay them a visit. Check them out. This is Gloves Off.
We're back at you in Gloves Off. I'm Professor Buitrón. I'm here with one of the icons of the Filipino martial arts, Grandmaster Bram Frank. And today we're going to cover and we're going to talk about what happened with the incident in Minneapolis and the death of Mr. Floyd. And number one, our sentiments go with the family of, our condolences with the family of the Floyd, and also with all the police that are out there that are being given a hard time. But we'll talk about the whole issues throughout this whole show that we have here, this segment, because it's very important for us to understand what's going on. And many people are seeing it from just one view. And we have to understand our feelings, and we have to understand policy and material. Good morning. How we doing, Jim? You doing good?
Yeah, very good, Brother Paul. Thank you for having me on the show.
No, thank you for being here, because we've talked extensively over what happened, and we've come to the same conclusions, and I think people need to see it in a different perspective. What's your intake on what happened and the use of force that was used?
Well, personally, I don't teach lots of neck controls today when I teach the police, because it takes a lot of training. Now, some of the guys who have extra BJJ or wrestling training or jiu-jitsu training, Filipino martial arts, Sabat, like you guys do, they understand some of it, but to take a regular officer and teach them, sometimes that's hard. So I generally, like the baton, they don't allow any kind of head strikes anymore. You're supposed to just always strike the arms and stuff so that no one screws up. But on this, as you said, there's multiple. First, let me say I'm very sorry to George Floyd's family. I'm sorry to the officers. I don't wish anybody pain, suffering, or death. As for the officers, a bunch of people came to me, and you hear them talking everywhere, how much the officers exceeded the level of force needed. there's a Washington State wrestling coach, Dave Hollenbach, who he's now fired because of talking about it. He's a police trainer, and he's got 20 years of wrestling. He's a brown belt in BJJ. Good man. And of course, he's being attacked because of what he did. He went and, tried to show that this is not a killing technique. And I've had people telling me, well, he stayed on the neck too long and he was there. And I saw someone, a reporter, Castle, I don't know their first name, you'll have to forgive me, said, what would you do with 200 pounds of force on your neck? And I said, how do you know it was 200 pounds? How do you know how much force was on this gentleman's neck? How do you know it was just there? Because I've been in that spot for that kind of control on the street situation where the knee is just to prevent them from getting up, not that I'm holding them down. Now, that being said, most of us don't use neck controls right now in the last few years because too many things can happen. And in this case, again, and I mean no offense to anyone, you have a man who's a criminal. He served lots of time. His last thing was for a home invasion with a firearm against a pregnant woman. He was high on fentanyl, methamphetamines, and alcohol, and that's why they called. He was acting strange, and he committed a federal crime. He passed off a counterfeit bill. They followed him to the car, and he was so blown out he couldn't even drive away. All of that exacerbated. Now, to get back to the training and what happened, the officers, and did they misuse force? I went to research, and Fox 13 in Minneapolis, the TV station, local TV station, went, and they were surprised to find out that neck restraints, including kneeling on a neck, is part of the Minneapolis police policy. So it's been reviewed before, and it's actually the police are allowed. What we just found out is through the Marshall Commission that in Minneapolis and Minnesota, lethal force chokeholds are actually allowed if you're in fear for your life. Most departments don't allow it just in case anything could go wrong with restraints, let alone I know when you teach, I know when I teach, we're not allowed naked chokes anymore. You had to always do carotid to just cut off the blood flow to put them to sleep. A lot of places actually still make that distinction, and some places still allow carotid, what we call sleeper holds, to put the guy out. In Minneapolis, for all the people, and again, I'm not trying to stir anything up, who are saying the officers broke the law and misused their training, it's part of their policy. All the way up to lethal force, naked chokes. So in a legal sense, the police didn't do anything wrong. And if all the people who are saying they picked on a poor black man, again, I think Candace Owens just addressed this very clearly and eloquently, that the black community right now in the last few times has taken a criminal, the lowest common denominator of the black community, to elevate them to some kind of angel sainthood to prove a point about force being used in the black community. And as Candace Owens said, no other group does that. And so here again, we have someone who's not a stand-up person in the community, and people go and look what the police did. So we have to separate the issues and go, what the police did, because these people want a conviction. They want the police being held responsible because it's within policy. They're not going to get the result they want, because when you get to court, they're going to go, did you exceed not the amount of training? Did you follow policy? And policy clearly states they're allowed to do this. Now, each officer in that situation, that he was resisting arrest and resisting getting in the car. So I can't say what that officer felt like personally to go, I need to control him, even though he was cuffed. We all know cuffed people still do stupid things. As for training, I don't know if he was actually trained in that technique, but because it's from their academy and it's part of their actual police force, use of force as policy, those guys didn't, again, separate issue, didn't exceed what they're allowed to do.
No, you brought up a very interesting point, and that is policy. There's a lot of policies of police department that date back to the 90s. They've never re-edited or re-amended them or revised them. And they continue with these old policies, and laws change, formats change of what you can use, and they still have those old policies. Let's take, I'm gonna switch, I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here. You know, we did, for a very long time, about 18 years of my life, I did Aikijitsu and Aiki with Sensei John Ayers, and he had studied in Homo Dojo in Japan with the Eishiba and so on and so forth. He used to teach certain, in the 80s, everybody in the police force wanted to do Aikijitsu, Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, not the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that we have now. Talking about Jiu-Jitsu as before, and Aikijitsu and so forth. And they would learn these techniques because they're the best ones basically for controlling people on the ground, for police work, right?
Yes.
And so you had a huge array of police officers that will take those classes. And he used to basically say, this is the way you do it now. And this is the evolution from the Aito-ryu, from the samurai standpoint to now. And he would show exactly. And what he did there was techniques that were used pre-jiu-jitsu, more for, I'm going to eliminate the person that's going out. Now, did he do it on purpose or did he do it by accident? He's the only one that knows that. But what happens with stuff like that is once you start putting, as you well know, open neck holes to the throat and to the neck and so on and so forth, you have to be very, very careful, because if you're not really trained in it sufficiently, you can mess up. And even if you're trained, you can mess up. So stuff like that needs to be taken off into account. Now,
I agree. And that's part of the issue that you and I had talked about, that I don't know what this guy's training was. So one issue is he didn't violate policy. Which
no, I'm with that.
You know, now, as for training, some of the training part, I agree. If I saw that, when I saw that, I went, oh my God, they've never changed their policies. It's like, you know, in Missouri, and I found out yesterday from my guys on the department down here, you know, we still have in Florida that if a guy turns his back on you and he's going away, you can shoot him in the back. You know, it's that whole thing with Michael Brown, hands up, oh my God, people got shot in the back. Well, that's their policy. But here, I'm like you, Brother Paul. I think we can't change what happened. And like I said, I don't wish that George Floyd died. I don't want anybody to die or get injured. You know, it's why I came up with my human rights-based training thing that I'm trying to bring up, you know, using my crimp and everything. But now that this has happened, we should use it on a positive side to let's review the training and update the training. Because you said some of the policy is based on training that's very old. And the attitudes people had of what we can or can't do have changed. Liabilities have changed. Sensibilities have changed. So rather than let's harp on this one incident and take it to these guys, let's use these guys as a starting point to clean the slate and fix what's there and update training. And now, you know, the first thing departments and agencies to fix their budget close out is training. Absolutely. I'm the training commander at 3 different departments down here, and all of them go, well, our budget's changed, so we need to trim the budget, so we're going to cut training out.
Yeah.
What good does that do?
You're absolutely correct. And every police officer, every law enforcement agency, they train them during the police academy, during the academy. And then after that, they don't train them anymore.
No, and you know, I obviously I get paid to teach at the departments, but you're right. Once they're out of the academy, some of these guys never see a training day again.
They never train again.
And up at S2, you know, we used to, because a lot of things you have to research it. I'd have guys come in who had never done the techniques from the day they were at the academy. And the only reason they came to my class was they needed a quick research so they could be on the street. And they couldn't do it, which is why I had developed, you know, the modular system so that they wouldn't forget it. And I'm like you, I'm a big person on training. The officers can only do all of us. We can only do as we train. If we don't train and practice, so a lot of the officers too, you either get the big tough guys who think they know what's going on and taking some extra classes. And again, if it falls within policy, you can't go, don't do it. So we need to update the policy. But we need to take a lot of the ones who are not big people, strong people, and people might be intimidated by controlling people because people forget bad guys struggle. It's not, oh, they gave up. They don't give up. And most of the officers know it's always a struggle out there that would give them the proper training and tools to do their job more effectively so that they prevent the bad guy from harming himself, the bad guy from harming anyone else, and they don't harm the bad guy. And people go, well, that's 3 major issues. I said, but that's what human rights-based policing is. It's not about, did I take out the bad guy? That's up for a court to decide. Obviously, in life or death, lethal force, you're not sure what to do, you have to make a decision. But the training needs to be updated.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. The training needs to be updated, number one. But the other things that needs to be revised and updated, and I've talked to many police officers, because usually what you get a young policeman, goes into the force, finds out that what he learned in the academy, those whatever hours, 24 hours or whatever they have them do, all of a sudden doesn't comply or is not effective in the street. So they're going to go out to search the martial arts world. Some might go into the Filipino art, some might go into Savat, some might go into Kempo, some might go into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA. Most of them are going to go to where the fad is. It's either MMA or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And those are great martial arts as per se. For the street, it varies. And we understand where it varies. And some martial artists understand that. You have sport, then you have reality, and a bunch of different things. But what I'm saying is sometimes they're being trained in arts that do not go with what the policy is and what the laws are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you train for that, all of a sudden you do that in the street and you're wearing a badge, you're already messed up. So we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very, very careful on how we approach that. Now I'm going to switch this around. Another thing that I've been talking to several police officers, and they all say is the following: we're not that type of police officer that killed that man over there. And I ask them this, I say, listen, have you ever complained against a bad badge in the force? And they'll stop and they say, no, I have not. And I go, why? Have you seen the bad action? Yes. Then they'll name a couple of them sometimes. I had a couple of them this past week that named a couple of them. And I said, why don't you file a complaint against them? He goes, because the same police and the unions go against you. So we have to somehow protect those good officers that actually tell a bad badge you're doing wrong. Because we're losing.
Brother Paul, think about it. That's the same thing in every profession. Good doctors are scared to say anything about bad doctors who can, in life or death situations, and some of them cause havoc. Bad attorneys, bad teachers, and those few screwed up for the majority. And in the blue, you have a different kind of bonding because these people are constantly on the edge. So sometimes they're scared if they complain about the bad guys, they're not going to get backed up when they really, really need someone. Because if you got a choice of your life on the line and having the bad cop come help you or no cop, believe me, it's being, and I would say foxholes make believers out of everyone.
I understand where that's coming from. So that's why when I told a couple of them, and I talked to a state representative here, and I said, where's the bottom line? Is the bottom line that we get automatic suspensions when somebody gets a grievance? Because I know that several of those officers that are there, especially the man that killed Mr. Floyd, the police officer there, he had 17 grievances against him.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, Brother Paul, you're right. Red flags were waving everywhere.
You know what I'm saying? So when do you just say, you know what, you're suspended? Period. You can't work in the force.
Yeah, well, they could have sent him on the first couple and went, you need more training. But again, we go back to they don't want to spend training budget. And when I've gone to teach officers, and I know it happens to you too, a lot of them have to pay out of their pocket. You know, so, and again, I went up and said, hey, I think you saw my video. I said, look, if you buy my tool, I'll supply free training. But you got them that they don't want to admit they have someone bad. It's a job where once they got someone in, they're scared they may not get someone back. And some of these officers, because it's empowering to be an officer with a badge and a gun, because you're allowed one level of force over a civilian. Most people don't understand. They go, well, they have to do it. No. When I grew up, if an officer tells you what to do, you're not supposed to argue. Voice is the first level. So if you don't comply with voice, they go to don't put your hands on me. Well, actually, I'm allowed to. I used voice. You didn't comply. I'm going to hands on. From hands on, because of lack of training or lack of tools, there's this big shade of gray. It might be my only option is I go right to lethal force. Missouri, you go right to lethal. So we need to not only, when there's things like this guy who has 17, as you said, citations and notices, that there needs to be immediately remedial training and go, there should be a flag about right now, let's weed those guys out. As you said, suspend them, and pursuant to, you need to pass this new training and new review. And if you cannot psychologically prove to me you're not going to abuse your power, we're going to have to ask you to not just take you off being the police force. You have to do a desk job. You may not be an outside department officer, because we need your manpower. So we'll use your brain. If you're not qualified to do any of it, dump them. The police don't need bad people. And again, I don't want people to think I'm condoning what this officer did. I'm not condoning. And that's why, again, I got to harp on it a little bit, that because and again, my officers we don't agree with how he handled the case, but people better understand, and a lot of these protesters better understand, they may not legally get the response they expect from a grand jury or a court because this guy was within policy. Now, you might be able to go back after the department, but the individual officer, he fits, even if what he did we think is wrong, we think it's morally that he abused it.
You're absolutely correct. And that's, and you see, and that's what happens here. We have to, lot belongs in all the way around, in all departments. Number one, policies need to be updated. Second,
absolutely. Training needs to be updated.
Training needs to be updated. We weed out the bad badges from the good badges. Because what happens is, you end up getting a complacent badge, a good guy being complacent, that he's going to be turning his eyes somewhere else because he knows that they're doing something wrong, and he's just going to he's going to be with a horse going down the road. And that is absolutely. So you have plenty of those. In fact, you have the good badges, and then the ones that are real good badges end up leaving and getting a job somewhere else. I've seen that. And I've talked to friends of mine and students of mine that I see them later on, and I tell them, how you doing with the police? And they go, no, I'm no longer working for it. It wasn't for me. So when I hear that it wasn't for me, I know something went wrong in the force, and they said, you know what? I don't want to be part of that nonsense. I'm leaving.
Right. And now, the other side of that whole thing is now you got people who are not only blaming the police, there are some groups, and I'm not going to name who they are because that'll open another can of worms, but they're openly calling for, and they're executing police. And just because there's bad police or someone's done something wrong, doesn't mean those officers who put their lives on the line every day, because most people don't understand. If you went to a booking division, if you go, my town is so clean. If they went to see a booking division, they go, all those arrests happen every day in my little town? Yes, you don't know it. Those police are stopping anarchy. They're going after the criminals, and they keep them off the street so you don't know it. So to go, this one bad guy, we're now going to, and it allows these groups to say it, we're going to kill officers. There have been 8 officers executed since this incident, and the FBI blotter and the police ledger are warning officers because they're posting pictures of officers' private cars and private homes and posting, go to their homes, blow up their homes, blow up their cars, and kill the officers, which is not going to fix the issue. All it's going to do is polarize people because the officers are going to be extra defensive. People who believe in law enforcement will be extra defensive, and it's going to actually push it more to the brink of a civil unrest because no one's going to want their life and family in jeopardy.
Listen, right now we're at that point, and it's going to get worse. And if we do not put a stop to it now, this thing's going to go out of whack. And we cannot be. I hear a lot of public officials say it will calm down. It's not going to come down until everything is burnt out. We have here in Laredo. We have now we have a small little communist party, if I could want to use that way. They already demanded the city to remove the police and dismantle the police force. And wait a minute, hold on. Let's start taking care of the situation first. We have to protect everybody, and we have to protect the police as well. I'm going to talk to you about my personal experience, and you've known that I train as well, and I used to have a huge group of Laredo police departments, police officers. I stopped teaching them. And I stopped teaching them for the following reason. They came in here one Monday, and they were all laughing about how good the technique worked. And I told them, what happened? The first thing they said was, so-and-so used the technique you taught us, and it worked wonders. How did the person attack? And they were all laughing amongst themselves training. And they wouldn't say anything. So when the officer came in and I said, hey, they told me that what I taught you last week worked. He goes, oh man, it worked wonders. Dropped them like a charm. And I said, well, how did he attack you? And he goes, he didn't attack me. And I go, what do you mean he didn't attack me? He goes, he was wearing handcuffs. He goes, I'm not here to teach you to go out there and protect others and protect yourself and beat up on people that are handcuffed. I kicked them all out of the school. And for years, I stopped teaching the Laredo Police Department. Even though I have family, I have brothers from the lodge there, I have students that have become police officers, and many because of that right there. And what I started seeing was a pattern, especially here in Webb County. I'm going to put Webb County together because there's a lot of different police agencies, from constables to sheriffs, from what have you. And you would see a bad badge. They wouldn't get their license removed. They will simply be told to resign, and they'll go to the sheriff's. And then you start hearing the stories of that bad badge in the sheriff's department again, because he didn't stop it. Once you get habitual, it becomes apt. And all of a sudden, he'll be removed and he'll be at this constable's office. And you start hearing the stories again.
I know. Well, that's the thing. The bad guy doesn't change. My mom, my late mom, Dr. Myrna Gould Harrison, when she first started out as a doctor of psychology, thought she could rehabilitate prisoners and criminals. And she came to me many, many years later and said, I hate to say this, but you can't change them. Whatever a person's personality is, it's there. And that goes with bad apples. You can't, the old thing of you can take someone out of the street, but you can't take the street out of them. And that's what, when we started, I said, other professions, doctors do that because each state in each county has their own rules. They're not allowed to have a national review board. So a bad doctor, a bad attorney, a bad anybody can go to the next county or just the next state. And none of that's held against them. And officers can do that, security people. And
so there has to be something somewhere in there.
Yeah,
that, maybe now with this incident, we sparked the fire to say, you know what, let's put this into legislation. And if a person commits 3 or 4, you know what, sorry, but go back into basket weaving or go play pocket pool for a living because you're not going to be here. Period.
Brother Paul, just the video I did the other day when you and I talked the other day, that's what I agree. Instead of talking about how bad this is, let's use this as the point to go, A, let's have a total review of all police. Let's give ourselves non-lethal tools to help them do stuff so they don't have to rely on, and change the policy and training and start fresh now. So we can look at all the groups who are upset and go, you're right. We're very sorry. We can't fix the injustices that have happened, but we're going to ensure as best we can that they don't happen from now on. Let's start, everybody make peace, and let's change the training. And all the people saying, let all the criminals out, put the criminals back in jail, please. You know, letting them out because of COVID was absurd. Letting these people bail out for every reason is absurd. A criminal's a criminal. But let's fix the issue with those who are supposed to protect us and start from now. So the people complaining about there should be equal justice and not misuse of force, and also educate them what is proper force, and go, that's too much. Well, no, in these situations, this is allowed. Let's educate everybody, but specifically, let's give fresh tools to our departments and our security and our officers so they feel empowered to do their job and don't feel their lives are in jeopardy, and we teach them how not to abuse what they have.
Absolutely. And they should not, and officers are out there. This is, and if you see an injustice, stop it. You're there to protect everybody. Stop it. Put your foot down.
Well, you see, you know, and there's another issue that the courts have said an officer is not required to protect anybody because so many people have complained. They're starting to limit and went without law, because people have our own structure of law. We don't really need it written down. And I tell people, laws don't stop crimes. Laws are so we have an even-handed punishment. So if I do something wrong and I go before you, you go, oh, Bram's my friend, I'll just let it go. And somebody you don't know, you hang them. Laws are so that we have an even-handed punishment for afterwards. Laws don't stop crimes. But without law per se and law enforcement, we have anarchy and chaos. You cannot have society without rules. And we need to educate the public. And again, all the places going, you know, what about training? The budget for training should be increased because training, knowledge is power, as you know. There's stuff I've been taught I would never do even on the street because, you know what? It was designed for war. And if I stick my fingers through somebody's eyes and go, see, I ended it, I'm going to be in big trouble. First of all, even if I was legally defending myself, maybe that action's right. But again, when I talk about multiple layers, I had no right to blind this guy. You know,
absolutely.
So,
and you have to, and we have to take that into, we have to take that into consideration. We have to take all that into consideration. And I hope right now this sparks, because right now the public officials, our elected public officials, are moving, and they're moving on the way of feelings. We don't make laws and we don't amend stuff on feelings. We have to sit down and literally study what happens, and then we act. Well, because we've gotten in trouble with just acting on feelings. And let me put it to you this way. If we do not stop this, the snowball's going to get bigger, and it's going to go from a snowball into a fireball, which is right now, and the destruction's going to go even to places.
I have an example. I know a real example for you. Patrick Hansen, a friend of mine, had a tracking system that he invented, and it was to track what the officers did every time they discharged or used any of their tools. It let them know when their training came up, gave listings of their equipment. And he tried for years to get the government, and he never saw his wife. He was from Canada. He ended up living at Quantico, in and out of there for years and years and years. And he was trying to get them to do it. And then a bunch of years ago, you'll remember, it's probably 8 or 9 years, it might be more, the FBI was caught and said, we don't know where our missing guns are. We don't know where our missing computers are. And Congress wanted to know what was going on. How did they deal with it? They turned around and said, we can't fix what happened. We don't know what happened, but We have a tracking system that this guy's invented so it'll never happen again. And I looked at people and said, don't you understand? That's the stage we're at right now. We can't fix all the injustices that have already happened. It's past. But we can do just what you said, Brother Paul. Right now we can move forward. So all the groups protesting, we can go, we're fixing it. We're not judging it by feelings. We're going to give real techniques, tools, and training to our officers and to the review boards on the street. Real techniques. We're going to effect a change now. And, you know, people have laughed, you know, for many years, I'm the wimp of the knife world because I teach biomechanical shutdown, non-lethal use of a knife, that less than lethal is the most effective. Oh, Bram, you should be poking people's eyes out. We can't do that. People go, what are we doing? I said, you know, when I invented a better Yawara tool with rescue capabilities, because I believe in the human rights of all people. You know, inside I can be just a nasty warrior like the rest of people, but I do understand people have rights. All people have rights.
Absolutely. And you know, and you have to understand when the use of force continues, you know. So, and a lot of people say, I did it for self-defense, and I took him to the ground, and I busted him up, and I kicked him in the face, and when he stood up, and so on and so forth, and I did an iron bar to him and broke his arm, and blah, 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 blah. You're going to court, buddy.
Yeah, and you were the guilty party. When that effect, as soon as he went down, that was it. I tell people, if the people said, just as soon as you see the open, hit him. I said, no jury in the land is going to go, how'd you know to hit him? He didn't hit you first. And after you took him down, why'd you stop him? Oh, well, I trained who we were told to finish him. Well, you're going to jail. You cannot finish someone. And I tell people, if a guy comes and he attacks you, you sweep him off his feet, and he falls down and injures his head. You will probably be clear to the criminal because you're allowed to defend yourself, but civilly, you may be responsible for the damage after he hit his head. You go, that won't happen. I go, yes, it will. You have to be responsible for your actions. And
absolutely.
Because of police, obviously, you know, police and security need to be one level of force higher because they have to control bad people who are trying to harm others. And I go, do you understand the hardest thing for all of us? And bouncers, real bouncers don't harm people. The people go, oh, I just get out there, we learn how to beat them up and whatever. The bar will be sued. You'll be sued. You can't do that. You can't injure someone. Now, I understand that everything will be judged on its merits of time, but we need to have so that people understand that's romantic myth about I can do whatever I want to the bad guy, and that officers, all of us, when we have a uniform on, we're under a microscope, and it's up to us. Not that we can do it, but we may not. We have to be the white knights. We have to be one level more humane and more ethical than the bad guy. Because as soon as we do what the bad guy does, we're no better than the bad guy. So listen, I really want to use this, like you said, as a stepping point. And you've seen I made a couple videos right going, let's go forward. I have, you know, new training.
You know, we need to touch base with our law enforcement. We need to touch base with our public officials, the lawmakers, and say, we need to protect everybody now. And how do we do it? Because dismantling a police force like they're doing in Minneapolis, now they want to dismantle it. Seattle's doing the same thing. What do you want? They're gonna push us into a brink of a new civil war. And if that's what they want, they're going to dismantle me.
You know, I used to live in Minneapolis. I have a great love for Minnesota, Minneapolis. I got a lot of friends there. And I cannot stand, and I hate to say it, you know, the Islamic terrorist groups that are there running and going, we want to run rampant and free, the gangs. Because if we get rid of the police, they're really going to run rampant, as you said, because they don't care. What we need to do is we need to have civics classes in school again to teach civics, a love of Constitution, what the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and what our Declaration of Independence guarantees for all citizens. Citizens get those rights. Human rights, everybody gets. But U.S. rights, that you got to be a citizen. Work to be a citizen. It should be a privilege to be here. You should want it. We need to teach civics class. We need to stop this civil unrest, and we've had a few times in our country where it's happened, but the way to stop it is what you've been saying. We need to prophylactically go, we have a solution. The solution is give us training. I've been trying to get a hold of President Trump, and every time I respond to those texts I get from or whatever, I go, look, I know I'm a little nobody. I have a modicum of fame, but give me a chance. There's a bunch of us. We are willing to help you work with the policy and donate our time and go, let us help train the police. Let's have a national format, a national policy of what all police can do. You know, in the Philippines and other countries, they actually have a national police force. And if the national police can do it, the local police can also do it and use those tools. People go, we don't want a national police. I want us to have a national police.
Well, we have one, but each state has its own sovereignty. You know, we have, you see, what we have here and what we've done here, a lot of the a lot of the constable associations are very, very powerful. And we need actually, a lot of those unions are very powerful as well. And they're not going to want a law that says if so-and-so has 3 grievances, he gets suspended for this time. And if he gets another 5, well, he loses his badge. They're not going to want that. But unfortunately, it has to happen. So,
of course,
I mean, it happens with everybody else. You know, plain and simple. I mean, they remove licenses left and right. People say, no, they don't. I go, yes, you do. I go, let a father not pay child support. He'll lose his license. And so people need to understand that you get these licenses, you have a license, you have it, you have to follow certain mandates to continue using it. And if you're using it and you're breaking how can I say, the code of that mandate, of that license, you have it removed. And people do not want to do that.
Brother Paul, when they lose that license, they can't run to another similar agency and start over.
Because right now,
that's why I said, and you know, I probably said this wrong. We don't actually need, well, I'd like a national police, but we need a national police policy that all agencies have to follow the same kind of human rights-based policing. And each department in each jurisdiction can have their own version of what they do. Because obviously, people, I don't want the states to give up states' rights. I don't want a government, but overall, we need to have, just like OSHA, people go, we make our own rules in each state about safety. But OSHA has a national standard of, you must meet these safety standards. Why? For the health and welfare of the citizens.
Absolutely.
Well, that's unacceptable. No, it's not. That's sometimes we have to step back, and we are not a democracy, by the way. We are a constitutional republic. Nowhere in our documents does it say we're a democracy. People go, well, the flames of democracy are, I said, you're mixing connotation with legal definition. So since we are a constitutional republic, the republic can say we need all, because federal law overrides state stuff, that for safety, because we're dealing as officers, marshal, with people that for their safety, our safety, these are uniform standards that must be followed. And that includes behavior, as you were saying. So if you get X number of strikes against you, you're done. And like I said, I don't want a guy to lose his job per se. So if you're not qualified to be on the road, I'm going to put you at a desk job. I don't want to be in a desk job. You're not qualified to be on the street. So unless you pass new psychological testing, you pass new physical training, till I see you're able to be on the street, I'm not going to make you lose your job because you didn't do anything that serious, but I'm going to put you at a desk. And if you can't do that, you're out. I don't want to see you in anything that involves dealing with people.
But, you know, that's what, that is the fight here. The fight is, I understand the protests. I'm for the protests. I defend the protests.
Absolutely. It's a constitutional right to assemble and complain.
But it says peaceful assembly. It's not going out there and breaking and looting and murdering and hitting women. I mean, I've seen video after video after video that makes your blood boil, and you're like, Jesus, you know, do not let the loose of the dogs that protect the town, because they're not going to like it.
No, well, look, my mom used to say there's no excuse for bad behavior. And what these people are doing, it's like right after Trayvon, I watched a bunch of high school kids raid Miami and Miami Beach. They destroyed the place. And the principal, a very well-educated black man, came out and said, "You've disgusted me with all of your behavior. There's no reason for this. There's no rationale." Well, look what they did. That doesn't give you the right to harm your neighbors. The people now who are saying kill everyone, I was surprised because the mayor of Atlanta is very liberal. So she's, I'm not sure, but she came right out and said, "How dare you burn your neighbors' businesses down and attack your neighbors' businesses and attack your neighbors. You cannot use bad behavior as an excuse," as we said, to get in the mud and be like the bad guys.
Absolutely.
All it does is make all of us, white, black, yellow, purple, who follow all that, be the animals that everyone's going, "Look at those disgusting people." We have the right to assemble. We have the right, especially with permits. And I've used this example with you before. I'm a good Jewish kid, an American Jewish kid. I have to support the right of the Nazis to assemble with a permit and say what they want. They may not act on it, but I have to defend their constitutional right to assemble and say, and they got a permit to march through a Jewish community way back when, and we had to support them on it. Someone said, "Look what they're doing." I said, they applied, they got a permit. They're not attacking anything, and I abhor everything about them. I hate them, but I have to support their constitutional right to do that. So right of protest, that's guaranteed. Nowhere in there, as you said, does it say you may burn buildings down, burn cars down, destroy property, kill people. They're ambushing officers. That's unacceptable. And the group saying it's okay, and the ones going, "Only this color matters," guess what? People used to laugh at me, and my son-in-law is much younger. I think he's Gen X. But many years ago, I think I told you, starts up with his wife, my daughter, and I said, "All lives matter." He goes, "How can you say that? You don't really mean that." And I said, "Yes, I do. If I said white lives matter, I'd be called a racist. If I said Jewish lives matter, I'd be called some kind of religious racist or bigot. I don't think you can say any one color matter. You know me, I'm colorblind. I'm religious blind. All lives matter to me. I don't like bad guys. I don't like people who break the law on anything. That means business executives and big business people ruin the environment and break the law and think they can just pay a fine. I'm not good with that. People harm others. I'm not good with anybody who does that. But I firmly believe all lives matter. And the right to protest and say we all deserve human rights granted to us, and citizens deserve U.S. constitutional rights under all circumstances. Everyone has to say, I need to be treated fairly. And again, I have to, again, other side of the coin. If you're a career criminal, I realize in a court of law, I may not hold your past against you, but in real, I'm going to hold your past against you because you're not a shining example of following the rules.
Absolutely. And this action of what happened, because number one, I'm going back to the police officer with his knee on his throat, and he's telling him, I can't breathe for 10 minutes. That should have been stopped. Period. I don't care about the conspiracy theories, and I might post them on Facebook and I read them, because sometimes I laugh and some people say, no, this is what you believe about. No, there's a reason why I posted it. Maybe I'm going to go back later on and read to see what people are actually thinking. Okay, because somebody thought of this and is putting it out there. There has to be a reason why. Now, and if that, I'm that type of person. I'll read all the different things, and then I come back to my conclusion and look at the film that was going on. There are way too many comparisons of the same type of event of what happened by police. And we can switch it over with the races, and we can have a white man on the ground with black officers on top, and it's happened before, and nobody does anything. This was fueled, and as soon as this happened, we spoke on the phone, and I was talking to others. I said, within 2 days, we're going to have riots. And sure enough, the next day there were riots.
Of course.
This was used for that purpose. It was polarized, militarized, whichever word you want to use, and it was taken out of context and it just ran. I understand the death. I feel for the family. I feel for the community. It should not happen, period. Should they be punished?
Well, you know, the groups that are pushing for this also don't want to go and hear both corners, because they went ahead and hired a private coroner who said, we can't help it. He had fentanyl in his system, a lot. It's not the first time he's done it. He's misusing fentanyl and methamphetamines and alcohol. And the very fact, and as a martial artist, ask me to go to court, I will. Because guess what? Anybody who can go, and I've been in chokeholds. I've done jujitsu. I've let my students choke me out so I can show that even with a carotid sleeper hold, it can be considered lethal force, because once you're unconscious, who knows what's going on. That if you're going unconscious, you can't be laying there going, I can't breathe. If you can't breathe, you can't talk. The very fact he's there going and people can hear him going, I can't breathe, one, the officer should try to figure out what's going on, which is a separate issue. But the knee on the neck was not causing him to die. And the actual county coroner report from Hennepin County said that's not what killed him. It may have exacerbated the situation. It doesn't condone anything the officer did, but the cause of death is not being on his neck. And you're right, it's being used to galvanize people who want to burn down America and take it out on us and go, we proved it. Now, I want you to know, the same people who are complaining about white officers complain about the black officers, the yellow, the whatever color, because officers are officers. They're trying to do a job. And again, I don't want to condone the actions of what the officer did, but there's mitigating circumstances in all of this, and I agree with you. It's being used and orchestrated and used to flame fire to cause destruction. And I once told, you and I think, talked about Gloves Off before. I actually got to meet Rodney King. Rodney King is a very big guy, and he was aghast that the riots happened after he got beat up. He actually felt bad about it. Now, this is a big man who was high on drugs, high on alcohol, and the rule was back then, they changed, you can't hit a guy in the head. And Rodney King, because we talked about Arnis and we're talking about different ways, he goes, why didn't someone just hit me in the head once? One guy would have gotten a reprimand. There would have been no thing on television of a bunch of guys trying to beat up a big black man who was very strong, and it looked disgusting. It looked horrendous.
But let me tell you,
they were abusing them. But nobody broke policy. But on this, and it flamed it, and no one tried to use it to flame. But here, the last few incidents from Trayvon, from Michael Brown to this, they're using it to flame discontent and using it to harm good citizens. Harming good citizens and your neighbors doesn't fix the situation. What you and I have been talking about, the only way to diffuse this crazy stuff right now is going to be to openly, us and the department's going, we're going to change what we did. We're not going to defund the police. We're not going to take the police departments away. We're going to change the training and the policies to fit a modern time. And we're going to get them, we're going to get them new tools to do it.
I don't know if right now our president can go ahead and make an executive order that can later on be used to formulate a law. And make an executive order in this content of, you know what? All grievances, if somebody has 4 grievances, 5 grievances at the police force, 3 grievances, you're suspended with no pay, period. If he can do something like that across the board, and Congress and Senate wake up to the matter, because they're all at fault, because none of them really have, everybody's kicked the can for so long, and right now it's already blown up, okay? The can was kicked so much, and right now it's up.
Right, well, that's what I mean. So someone has to do something. So that's why I've been on the last few days going, look, please don't think I stand for the riots and the looters. Don't think I stand for the police. Don't think I stand for the guy who got hurt. Don't think I stand for any of it. I stand for everybody. What I want to do is change the training. And yesterday, President Trump, where the election said, we don't need to defund the police. We need to pay more training. The police need better training. I'd like him to build on that. Because right now, I'm not going to worry about the bad cop. What I need to do right now is take the guys on the street and change their policy and their training. Then I can worry about weeding out the bad apples. Right now, the most important thing is that people who are hands-on the street, putting up something that says, I slap your wrist because you're a bad guy, I need to change everybody's training and everybody's mindset. So let's do the training first. Better tools, better training to ensure it doesn't happen. Then let's start weeding out the bad apples.
I think everything has to come in one swift blow and then be adjusted after that. But other than that, we're running out of time, and it's always a pleasure, my brother. And hopefully folks that are out there and listen to this can say, you know what, there's more to this than just going out there and breaking windows and stealing and beating up people. We have to stop that. We are all for peaceful assembly. I'm for the protesters, rioters. I'm not looters and rioters. I'm against. I support the police. In fact, I have for many years. Right now, you all have to stand up against the bad cops. Inside your own departments, you have to say, you know what, buddy, put your bullshit, step aside, and don't give us a bad name. And it has to happen. And if those police officers need psychologicals and so on and so forth, it needs to happen as well, because sometimes we get into a habit, and a habit can be good or bad. It's a habit. And sometimes since we go into that habit, we don't understand that we're doing the wrong. It already became habit. So somebody has to tell you, you're screwing up, start changing.
That's why I keep saying we have to break the chain. When I'm going on, and you see me last days, I'm up there going like this, Brother Paul, going, I have a tool and a training. Let me break the chain. It's the only thing at my level I can do. I'm one little piece. I have a modicum of fame, a modicum of credibility. I'm going, let me break the chain. I'm willing to contribute. Let's break the chain of this madness. Because if we break the chain of madness, all the people who want to protest peacefully will go, we don't want anything to do with the looters and the people causing trouble. If we break the chain, the officers go, oh, you're for us. We're willing to break the chain. We want the new training. Then we can look and go, we need to break the chain of the bad people in each profession and weed them out. But wait, someone's got to start. And that's why I've been on the last few days. I know we're running out of time. That I stood up and went, let me be on everybody's side. Let me break the chain. So just
right
know,
now we have to.
I agree with you. I want to break the chain and I want to fix everything. I believe in America. I believe in our rights. And I believe I'm colorblind. One last little thing from me. I think you've heard me say it before. My daughter used to go, Daddy, are people different? I said, Rachel, if an alien came down here, like the Predator type thing, or the alien, they'd look around and go, wow, look at them. They come in all these shapes and colors, and they're all different, and they all taste like chicken. People said, you told your daughter? I said, yeah, because underneath the shapes and colors, we're all the same. We're all the same people.
Absolutely.
So on that note, I'll let my babble go away and go, thank you, Brother Paul. Be very safe. And thank you.
Be safe. Have a great weekend. And folks out there, be peaceful and protect yourselves if you have to. Until next time. Peace.
I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.